You all, my jaw just about hit the ground when I heard about this new voting law that has just been signed into law by Abigail Spanberger. And it should terrify every Virginian, especially if you have a family member or a loved one in a care home, assisted living facility, memory care unit, or even somebody that has a guardianship. What we're talking about in this video is not a story about voting rights, although that's what Democrats would like you to think it's about. It's actually a story about vulnerable people, people who may be elderly, disabled, cognitively impaired, dependent on caregivers, or unable to fully advocate for themselves, like Alzheimer's patients, the most vulnerable amongst us, being turned into political pawns. And we all know which side is going to do it because they've been doing it for decades now. Oh, and stick with me through this because one of our favorite degenerates, Louise Lucas, has a starring role in all of this. Again. Hi, I'm Terry Christoph. I'm a fed up Gen Xer and a ticked off Virginian who's come out from behind the scenes in conservative media to grab the microphone so you and I can talk about what's really going on. Welcome to Smart Girl Politics. This scary new law came to my attention a few weeks ago. I saw a tweet from Tim Anderson. If you don't know him, he's a former delegate, a Republican delegate in the House of Delegates here in Virginia. And he's a font of information. He's a lawyer. He will break it down what's going on in Virginia. So if you are on Twitter and you need, or X, and you need a good follow, Tim Anderson's the guy. He regularly puts out information on what Democrats are trying to do to Virginia. And the alarm bells went off big time when I saw this one. Abigail Spanberger signed this into law on April 8th. And it's going to take effect on July 1st. Let's take a look. So we're bopping on over to X, Tim Anderson. He's at Assos Anderson, if you want to follow him. Like I said, he is a former Republican delegate. He also is a lawyer, and he is a great follow for especially Second Amendment. He is a firearms instructor, too. But really, he's just a great overview on what's happening. And he flagged this. Tim writes, "This is now law on July 1st. Someone is incapacitated due to a disease like Alzheimer's and needs a guardian because they are incompetent, is still eligible to vote unless a court makes a specific finding to revoke voting rights. You don't know your name, you don't recognize your kids, but you can vote. Or should I say, the nursing home aides will be happy to fill out your absentee ballot and mail it in for you. This is so disgusting." And that's what Tim Anderson concludes. And I second that emotion. This is SB 34, like I said, signed into law on April 8th by Governor Spanberger. Summary as passed: incapacitated persons finding of lack of capacity to understand active voting provides that a finding that a person is incapacitated in a proceeding for guardianship or conservatorship shall not be synonymous with a finding that such person lacks the capacity to understand the act of voting and therefore is not qualified to vote in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution of Virginia. The bill provides that no person shall be deemed disqualified to vote due to lack of capacity for the purposes of the Constitution of Virginia unless a court makes a specific finding by clear and convincing evidence that such a person lacks the capacity to understand the act of voting. Some of the comments are very telling. Yeah, if you take into account Alzheimer's, dementia, hospice, brain injury, no senior facility should be reporting 100% of patients voted. We've seen that happen before. Most of the ballot harvesting numbers we see in the data are from assisted living, blah, blah, blah. So we know. So that basically what this says is your incapacitated grandma, your 95-year-old grandfather who needs a guardianship to live out his life because he's not able to make his own decisions anymore, is not disqualified from voting. Now, in the best case scenario, you're helping him vote. In the worst case, somebody else is, and somebody without good intentions, and I think we know who that is. They'll steal the votes any way they can. If the Virginia Supreme Court won't let them gerrymander the congressional map, they'll find other ways to grab power. Let's face it, this new law reduces Virginians to one thing, at least in the eyes of Virginia Democrats: ballots. Your grandfather in the memory care facility, he's a ballot to them. He's a number. He's a vote to be collected, a voter that needs some help filling out his form. And these votes could literally be guided by somebody else's hand, which is terrifying. And if that sounds harsh, all right, good, because that's what Virginia Democrats just did with SB 34. and it deserves the harshest of our scrutiny. Democrats call it compassion. They care. They care so deeply, don't they? They call it dignity. They're respecting the dignity of the person. Don't get me started on that one. We'll go down that road. They'll say something like, "We're protecting the most vulnerable people." Here's a question I don't think they will answer, however. Who is actually casting the ballot when the voter depends on somebody else to have the ballot explained, if they need help filling out the ballot, handling the absentee paperwork, and getting the ballot into the mail? Because in a care home setting, that's not some just sort of strange scenario that might happen. It's real life, and we've seen it happen time and time again. It plays out all the time. It's called ballot harvesting. Ballot collecting, also known as ballot harvesting or ballot chasing, is the gathering and submitting of completed absentee or mail in voter ballots by third party individuals, volunteers, or workers, rather than submission by voters themselves directly to ballot collection sites. It occurs in some areas of the U.S. where voting by mail is common, but some other states have laws restricting it. Sounds pretty smart to me. Proponents of ballot collection promote it as enfranchising those who live in remote areas or lack ready access to transportation, are incapacitated, or in hospital or jail. Critics of ballot collection, ballot harvesting, claim high probability for vote misappropriation or fraud. I used to live very close to an elderly assisted living facility, and it was quite well known. It was in Fairfax County, quite well known that the Democrats would just rush in there a little bit before the election day and just kindly help them fill out their ballots. And lo and behold, like one of that commenter said, like 100% of people in the memory care facility somehow voted. It's a little strange, isn't it? And this is where Louise Lucas, our favorite degenerate, enters the chat. Yes, the woman whose offices and weed shop was just raided by the FBI as part of a corruption probe initiated, let's note this, by the Biden administration. And I'll link that story for you if you need to get caught up on that. We haven't had much news, and Louise has gone. She's very quiet these days. She's not all over social media with her 10 effing 1 map t-shirts. Yeah, that's our girl. Not only is Louise Lucas a weed dealer, she's also tied to Lucas Lodge, a business serving adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the Portsmouth area. And this is the exact kind of population that Abigail Spanberger's new law affects. So we go over to our friends at Restoration News. This is, as we'll note, September 19th, 2025. So just as the election was heating up, actually the very day that early voting started and the gubernatorial election, Restoration News flagged something very interesting. Hotline tip suggests staff members charged with caring for mentally impaired individuals are exploiting them for political purposes. Election integrity activists with the Center for Vulnerable Voters are calling on Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares, we miss him, to investigate allegations that a state senator's healthcare business is exploiting mentally impaired adults in violation of state law. The Center, a project of the American Constitutional Rights Union, received a tip claiming staff members with Lucas Lodge, LLC, owned by Virginia State Senator L. Louise Lucas, Democrat from Chesapeake, have been illegally registering people in their care to vote. The allegation comes just days before early voting opens in Virginia's hotly contested blah, 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 blah. The Virginia law clearly states no person adjudicated to be mentally incompetent shall be qualified to vote. So why do we think this new law, SB 34, was just signed by Abigail Spanberger? It's a law that benefits somebody like Louise Lucas, who up until very recently had Abigail Spanberger thoroughly under her thumb. So the allegations against Lucas Lodge, they weren't particularly vague. They were actually crystal clear. Vulnerable adults were being exploited for political purposes. Again, this was an allegation. There's been no convictions. There's been, as far as I know, no legal action taken against Louise Lucas in this case, but obviously there's something brewing against her, and we'll be keeping our eye on that. But doesn't it make your hair stand on end to think about what is possibly going on there if they're registering voters and these people are not able to really care for themselves or make these decisions, and helping them fill it out, gathering them all up, taking them over to the ballot box? What a surprise! Louise Lucas and her minions manipulating the votes of vulnerable Virginians under her care. I don't know about you. I just did not see that coming. I mean, she seems like such an upstanding citizen, doesn't she? And of course, Jason Miyares is no longer our Attorney General, although he did brilliant work on the just say no to redistricting, gerrymandering, whatever you want to call it. And I think we're going to see I think he's going to run for governor, don't you? In 29, I think so. I think he's gonna run. So Jason Miyare's no longer our attorney general, so there's nothing he can do about it. And of course, Jay Jones, two bullets, Jones. He's not going to pursue actual justice. He can't even spell Virginia or senator correctly. He can't get the filing to the Supreme Court of the United States correct. This buffoon, we're expecting a little bit too much from him if we think he's going to protect our most vulnerable citizens from having their votes stolen. Here's the bottom line. Abigail Spanberger's new voting law says guardianship does not equal voting incapacity. The court has to make a separate finding before someone is disqualified from voting. Supporters call that dignity, blah, blah, blah. They're always going to use those phony words, those weasel words. That's what the Democrats do. Oh, we're respecting their dignity. Okay, well, sure. But in some place like a care home setting, it could mean a vulnerable adult, my mom, your dad, your grandpa, someone, a dear friend. Even though they're under guardianship, they remain on the voting rolls, and somebody else does the explaining, the assisting, the ballot handling, the transport, and maybe even the deciding on who this person votes for. And when the person who benefits politically from those ballots is part of the political class, such as Louise Lucas, that's not just a red flag, that's a 5-alarm emergency. And we've got another one. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Virginians, but we got another one on our hand. Now, as always, the question is there anything that can be done? And it looks like there is. Julie Perry is a candidate, a Republican candidate, to run for Congress in my district, Congressional District 10. She's actually pointed it out last week after all this stuff started coming out about Louise Lucas and fraud and corruption and whatever. We're going to find out about it hopefully soon. She's talking about it, but she points out, like Tim Anderson before her had done, about this new law, SB 34. People are like, this is so insane. Can anything be done? They're taking advantage and using ill and impaired people. So incredibly sick and evil. And it is. Julie Perry says, according to ChatGPT, now, of course, this is we'll have to make sure that that's the right thing. But according to ChatGPT, this new Virginia SB 34 law can be challenged in both state and federal court. This law violates Article 2 of the Virginia Constitution and the 14th Amendment due process of the U.S. Constitution. I hope this gets legally challenged because this new Virginia law will make it easier for the Virginia Democrats to exploit mentally impaired adult voters to vote for Democrat candidates against their will through coercion or vote theft. And if you don't think that Louise Lucas is not going to engage in vote theft, we need to have a talk. And Julie's exactly right. This needs to be challenged as soon as possible. And if you have a loved one whose vote could be easily stolen, please keep an eye on this. As I said, she signed it. Abigail Spanberger signed it on April 8th. It goes into effect July 1st. If you know somebody who is incapacitated, who is vulnerable, who has a guardianship, be aware that their vote is going to be the one thing that Virginia Democrats want. By hook or by crook, they'll do whatever they have to do. They'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, let's hope that some rational citizens who maybe are concerned about their parent or loved one or grandparent, whoever, being taken advantage of, sues the crap out of them, because they're going to do it to us. They're obviously do it to us. We got to do it right back to them. This cannot stand. We need to protect our citizens. All right. That's all I got for you guys this time around. If you do need to catch up on what's going on with Abigail Spanberger's overlord, Louise Lucas, I'll post the video that I did last week about all the things that are happening with her. I will be back real soon with something. It's just a never-ending stream of things happening here in Virginia. So I will be back soon with a new video. Always be safe out there, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.